Welcome back to this week's late episode of Delayed Offside. This is a fantastic and special episode of Delayed Offside because it is a playoff preview episode. Playoff preview episode.
Playoff.
But
that was actually pretty good.
But before we get too deep into playoffs, I think we need to take a little bit of a look back. And I'm going to just jump to my friend Ryan here for this one.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Baron. So as you said, let's take the time to look back. This is our first pod since the Calgary Flames were officially eliminated. And, I thought this is our playoff preview episode, and then we're going to be getting into the playoffs from here on in. And, there's probably not going to be a lot of times we're going to be talking about the Flames from here on in. So, for Sunjay's sake, I thought we could take some time for them now. For those of you new to the podcast and don't know, Sunjay loves the Flames. And Sunjay, you were really loving your team early on in the season. And, it reminds me in a lot of ways of what it's like early in relationships. It starts off red hot and everything is perfect and they can do no wrong. So having said that, I put together a little video here for you, Sunjay.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait to see this.
Here we go.
Baby, I love you. I love you.
Markstrom, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say he will be a top 3 goalie in Flames history by the time he retires. Johnny Gaudreau. This year, he's back and he's firing on all cylinders. I've seen the emergence of Anderson and Hannafin and Valimaki. And Jeff Gordon has done it. I think he's done a terrific job with that team.
It was a goddamn joke. And when I think of you, I hope you fucking choke.
I'm officially calling it. It's tank season. Bring in the tanks. Let's get a top 10 draft pick and let's do this thing right. Let's lose. Let's go 0 for the rest of the year.
Oh my God.
It's like a country song.
That was for you, Sunjay. That was
excellent. That was excellent, man. I love that. That was so good.
Wow.
Johnny Gaudreau's shooting on all cylinders.
Jeff Horst done a great job with him this year.
Oh my God.
When you're right 50% of the time, that means you're wrong 50% of the time. So
I feel for you, Sunjay. We've all been there.
Yeah. I mean, just wait till next year when they turn it around and win the West. And
because they only have to compete against the Sharks, the Ducks, the Kings, probably Seattle, the Coyotes. So it will be a much smoother transition, I think, next year for sure.
You give the Flames way too much credit, Barry.
I have to. Someone has to help you out.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Ross and Rachel is like the Flames in the playoffs. It's like, will they, won't they, will they, won't they? This time Rachel stays on the plane and she goes to Paris. She's not getting off that plane this time for the Flames in the playoffs. So it's the way she goes.
All right. Well, with that, let's start the pod. Welcome back to this week's episode of Delayed Offside. A little bit of a special week. This is a little bit of a late episode, but at least you know that your stop time between this episode and the next one won't be nearly as long as the last time. A lot has gone on this last week in the NHL. Some really big stuff, some pretty big stories. So we're going to hit some of those right off the bat. If you're listening to this podcast and you're a Buffalo Sabres fan, question is why? No, just kidding. But if you are listening to this and you're a Buffalo Sabres fan, you were probably taken back a little bit this week when Jack Eichel came out during his media availability and pointed out to the fact that him and the organization, specifically the Buffalo Sabres, were not on the same page when it came to his rehabilitation. If you're unaware of the situation, he has I think it's a hemorrhaging disc in his neck, and he wants to get an artificial disc put in. So he sought a second opinion about an artificial disc, but the Buffalo Sabres would prefer that he goes through a regular rehab because there's not any high performance athletes that have done this and come back quite the same, or at least that they have as an example. So they're a little weary on it, and they've stopped him from getting the surgery. So I guess this leads to a couple questions, really. Where does Eichel sit with the organization? Is this something that can be mended? And if not, is he going to be traded out of Buffalo? Where are you guys at on this?
Well, I guess I'll take this. Does not seem pretty, but all broken fences can be rewired and tightened up. I've been watching some Yellowstone.
Good comment there, Daryl.
Anyways, yeah, hold on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Arm, I can take the fence and make it tighter with my brother Brent. Or perhaps one of my other 65 brothers, bar one sister. Anyhow, if the horse is put to pasture, you got to take the rifle and do the right thing. Dogs need to be fed. You send it off to the plant and hope Sparky comes back to feed the Dalmatians. It's been a Sutter minute.
So what were your thoughts on Buffalo?
Yeah. Just edit this out.
Anyways, I think, you've really got to start listening to your players. You got to see them as a human being, and you've got to take into consideration what they think they need and they want. Look what the Oilers did for Connor McDavid. He had, one opinion, went for a second, went for a third, and then they ultimately just did rehab to try to let that injury re-heal, and it ultimately did. I think that if a player is feeling that he can do this and confident enough that it can be done without being a detriment to their career, you may want to look into it a little further than just other athletes like that have had it done and have come back. You may want to actually talk to medical professionals as opposed to just researching it.
I think that they've probably talked to medical professionals. I just don't think that they're happy with the answers that they've received. Like McDavid took the rehab route when the surgery would have been easier. This is the opposite. The surgery is probably quicker, but I think it's just the fact that it's such an unknown. Like the rehab was an unknown for McDavid, but at any point he could have jumped into surgery. Once Jack Eichel does surgery, he can't undo it.
No,
like it's done, and
it'll never be the same.
That's right, and I think that is the scary part.
That's very fair. And also, what's the recoup time? Do they miss out on a Jack Eichel year? That's another question, right?
Or even if he comes back, is he ever going to be the same player again? Right? Like that's the worry. So even if he takes a year or two to come back, he may not be the Jack Eichel we all know and love, right? Like he may not even come back, right? Like this is unknown territory. I'm trying to think of like a comparable, and like I remember Peyton Manning had some neck surgery when he moved to the Broncos from the Colts, and he missed like an entire year, moved to the Broncos, and he was still really effective for a couple of years. So
his forehead grew huge, like wicked post-surgery.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, is Eichel going to be a Sabre or not? I mean, if you had asked me before, I would have said there's no way. There's no way the Sabres are going to trade Eichel. I still think it's slim. I mean, you can't win that trade. And why would you trade a young franchise center who's just in the prime or entering the prime of his career? But after I actually listened to the conference, I was, this is way worse than I thought after reading the headlines. Like you could tell he was pissed with the organization. Mm-hmm. And, do you keep a player on if he really wants to leave? Some GMs wouldn't. Like I know Brian Burke said, if a player ever demands a trade, I trade them. Like, why do I want someone who doesn't want to be here? So I'm sure Buffalo's going to try to mend those fences and work with him and fix the issue. But I mean, first, with this neck issue, and then just how bad the Sabres have been for years. It's been 6 years that Eichel's been in the league, and they can't make the playoffs. They were like one of the worst teams in the league, or the worst team in the league this year. They had that horrible stretch of however many games they lost in a row.
It was 16 or 17.
It was a record, and is is it looking any better going forward? Like, it must be very frustrating for Eichel for, you know, just the years he's had to play for shit teams. And now, you know, they're not letting him get the surgery he wants. So he might put up enough of a stink that they eventually have to give in and trade him. It might happen.
So if we're looking at this from a different perspective, let's say as a team perspective, like outside of Buffalo, you have a player who has to go for a surgery, potentially unknown results, who wants to go for the surgery route versus rehab. Is this a player that teams are still going to be interested in? Like, and I think we know the answer to this, but like, does that hold it off a bit till after the surgery? Or is it like this trade's going to happen in the off season kind of thing, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, if I'm making a trade for Eichel, I'm making sure he gets a physical with my own professional team after the fact to make sure he can still play up to his standard. But I mean, yeah, players of his caliber and age aren't available very often. So there's going to be teams who want to make that trade for sure.
Yeah, but I think his value is definitely going to go down. You mentioned, like, how can Buffalo win this trade? I don't see teams, you know, if he's 100% healthy and people knew he's healthy, he would get, you know, a king's ransom for him. But with this huge unknown, would you be comfortable giving up multiple first-round draft picks, your best prospect, and a roster player for him at this point? I don't think I would be. If I'm if I'm Brad Treliving and Calgary has a chance to bring him in, I don't know if you take the gamble, to be honest with you. I mean, you could get like an amazing player for the next 10 years, or you could get someone who, you know, isn't able to come back from this, and unfortunately, you know, puts up half or a quarter of the points that he normally does. So it's such an unknown. You'd have to think of like a team that maybe has nothing to lose, or maybe wants to take a big gamble or a big chance. But I think, you know, if he's 100% healthy, there's 31 other teams that are willing to trade for him. Now, given this new information, there's maybe only like a handful.
But that's the thing, though, is that there are teams very interested. Like, they showed a list, I think, of like, there's a betting odds on the top 10 teams who are most likely to land Eichel if he becomes available. So out of the teams in the NHL, who do you think is a team that is willing to make a trade to get this player? And why? What do you think they're going to be able to give an offer in return versus a different organization?
Arizona, Phil Kessel.
Feel the thrill, man. He's a draw.
Yeah,
Yeah,
900
like that's
points.
Yeah, that's gonna make all the difference in Buffalo.
Can't make them worse. Can't make them worse.
The teams
Maybe Buffalo says, okay, you know, you don't have to give us any great picks or any great prospects, but you have to take Jeff Skinner off our hands too. And then they shed both those contracts.
If you throw Jeff Skinner, then you are not paying anything for Eichel, because you cannot pay enough money to get rid of that Skinner contract.
You just unload all the contracts.
Like a rare skin condition to his hockey equipment, like Marian Hossa, and then quietly come off the books.
Hossa was still more effective than Skinner was. Yeah.
When he wasn't playing.
That's the thing.
I don't know who has the assets for. Like, I know everyone keeps saying the Rangers, but I don't think they have.
I'll give you the teams that are common conversation piece. So the New York Rangers, for example, and it might not be so much that they have pieces, but they have players for sure that they can move at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And the other big one is the Los Angeles Kings, who have one of the deepest prospect pools in the NHL. Like, it's something like out of the top 70 prospects, they have 10 or something. Like, it's huge. Because they have like a ton of young guys. And then Anaheim's another team that's apparently quite interested in him. So of those three, who do you think is likely to get him and why?
I mean, go Anaheim.
All right. Well, how come?
You know, Getzlaf's getting up there in age. His contract's going to come off the books this summer, so they're going to get a whole bunch of cap space. They have good prospects, and they're a team that hasn't been very good for a number of years, and they're not used to that. So I think Anaheim will make the play for him.
Adam?
No, I agree with Sunjay. You know, that team is aching. They need a new Aikens. All right. Aiken. Huh?
Ryan, go ahead. Go ahead, Ryan.
I don't know. I keep hearing the Rangers, so I'll go with them. I honestly don't have a reason as to as to what they have that other teams might not. I mean, obviously they have a lot of great prospects. Are they willing to trade like a Capo Caco or Lafreniere? Are they willing to trade some of those young guys? And then they're going to have to get rid of shed some salary too. Like, who are they going to give up? Like, are they going to give up Chris Kreider to make room? Just looking at maybe Jacob Trouba, that would shed $8 million there.
What about
you're looking at no movement clause, right?
Right.
And,
yeah.
and there's the other. There's another issue. Is Buffalo really going to trade him to a team that's going to be like beating them, playing them for the next couple of years? Probably not. Like if you're trading Jack Eichel, you're doing like the Ottawa Erik Karlsson. See you twice a year, and we'll only have to have our fans see you once.
Right.
I think. Like,
I mean, it won't be in division though, but still, yeah, you're right. It'll be.
You could make a flip though. You could legitimately trade for Jack Eichel and then throw him back to a team like what they did with Martin Jones, where he was essentially traded out of conference and then traded back to the conference when San Jose recouped him. And that would make a very interesting move, actually.
Yeah.
The one I think that most
what about,
people...
did you say Seattle Kraken at all as one of the teams?
No, but
No?
that's a potential. Sure. That's
Like,
a good idea.
Well, I mean, obviously they don't have anything to give up right now, but if you're looking for a team that could maybe take on a Jeff Skinner contract, maybe the Kraken could. Maybe they'd be willing to do it.
Why?
Well, because then you still get Jack Eichel and you get butts in the seats.
You're $20 million in cap space taken up for how many years on a player that's potentially never going to hit his limit and one who's already passed it?
How many years does he have left?
How many years of being a Leaf fan damaged you?
I think, like he's still on the books.
It's a new contract. I think, because the max was 8 years, I think, when he signed it. And I think his is only year 2.
Let's see. How many years does he have left?
Geez.
There's a guy who just like one good season, just payday, and it just broke him.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot of years left.
Like I mean this. Like the Buffalo Sabres have all these long-term contracts that have just aged terrible. Okposo, Molson, and now you got a Skinner. Like it's just constant. Like their owner has hucked money and sunk that organization.
Maybe they take Kyle Okposo off their hands. He's only got 2 years left. At $6 million per.
You can barely play.
You know what? That's not a bad.
But here's the thing:
Kraken
wouldn't be expecting to be good, I wouldn't think, for a few years.
Well,
so you could take, and they're probably going to get a bunch of cheapish contracts to start off with. So they should have some cap space. Maybe they're like, okay, we'll take off Pozo. We'll throw you. I don't know what.
I think if you make a deal, you take Okposo. You say, okay, I'll take Okposo, but I want a second-round pick too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you could see Okposo would be a fine third, fourth liner. Like he's tough enough, he's strong enough, he's got some skill. Like he'd be fine.
Injured.
Skinner has. I didn't realize Skinner had that many years left.
How many?
6 years left.
Good for him.
And how
much?
At how much?
$9 million.
Yeah.
Good for him.
That's more than Draisaitl makes. Think about that.
Yeah.
That's
less than what Draisaitl. That's more than what Draisaitl makes.
Yeah.
That's more than what he makes. He makes $8 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Draisaitl needs an agent is what he needs.
He has a tough agent. He got $8 million and people were pissed off because he got overpaid.
But it worked out for the Oilers in the end.
Well, honestly,
the Oilers signed him at the right time. They signed him at the perfect time before he hit his peak and started producing as a superstar.
He would be making less if he hadn't had such a good playoff run. He was one of the top point getters against the Sharks and Anaheim, and that's what he ended up getting $8 million for. Other than that, he probably would have been the same as like Johnny Gaudreau, who I think signed the year before or 2 years before at like $7 million. Yeah, because that was kind of the going rate, I think, around then.
So that's always the gamble, eh? It's like you bet on your young players, hoping that they're going to get to that level, and if you can do it successfully and sign them early enough, then you can have them for cheap when they should be worth a whole lot more. But obviously it could have gone the other way, right? And he might not have lived up to that high of a contract, but obviously it worked out for the Oilers.
And the cap, right? Like the cap was climbing. So if you sign a guy for big money in the first year, the next year it's cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
It gets cheaper and cheaper. Yeah.
But that's
why like Crosby
true.
and Malkin are like so cheap now.
Yes.
Whereas before they were super expensive.
But even the sounds like Ovechkin, they're putting aside a ton of money to pay for Ovechkin again. And that's an old player to be hucking 10 to 12 million at. Like it really is. But Russians love to get paid.
Yeah. Well, he can still score goals.
He can, but is he still elite?
No.
Exactly.
I'd say so. He's like
I would say goal scoring.
He's still top tier, but
But is he a top 10 player in the league?
No.
Okay, so why would you pay him the most of anyone in the league then?
You're paying for goals, and goals are expensive.
But
And probably you're also paying him for what he's done.
right, but
For
he's
the
always been
organization.
paid. He's always got paid more than Crosby. He's gotten paid more than everybody. And because of that high cap hit, they had some struggled years building teams around him. Other
Right.
guys took discounts. Why isn't he taking a discount on the team? He's already got his cup. He's got his money. If he wants another one, why wouldn't you take a discount on it?
Ask
Well, I'm sure the
Ovechkin.
Players Association
No, I'm
doesn't
asking
want.
you. You're the panel. You guys are all like, "Oh yeah, 12 million for a guy who used to be extremely like."
Because he only cares about the money.
Like, would you pay Malkin 10 million? No, and because he's no longer a top 10 player. I'm
Well,
not saying he's a bad
and
player.
the problem with Malkin is also durability. Is
It's always been the issue with Malcolm.
always injured. What Ovechkin's been injured like for the first time in what 12 years?
You're right. He is
Like-
legitimately durable.
Yeah.
Yeah. He-
And
Which
you know
is
what?
which is
Someone
actually
you can
very
count on.
impressive for
He's
the
got
kind of game he
leadership.
plays.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. But I just think, man, 12 mil. If you had to pay 12 million for Ovechkin, I'm like
Is that what they're going to pay him?
I think that was what the rumor was, that they were opening up in cap space.
Ooh, yeah, that's
what I'm saying.
Very pricey.
No, that's what I would say maybe 10, 9,
And for how many years? Because if you lock him up for
like
8 years,
2 or 3.
that's the other thing. Ovechkin's going to get a long-term contract here. I just can't see it not being like, how would you short him? How could you short that guy?
Well, I
crazy.
mean, let's talk about McDavid when his contract's up. When he's like 34, say Edmonton, has success. Would you be willing to pay him so that he retires as an Oiler, or would you be okay with watching him leave and he could get 10 million from someplace else?
Ask us
Very
on
good
the
point.
podcast
Very
at
good
that time.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah,
course,
no, you're right. Like you
and
are.
of course,
You are. Yeah.
he
a
makes
very good
money
point.
for the organization, right? He sells tickets. So
It's-
you can base it all off of performance, and you probably should, but I mean that is another factor.
And Ovechkin sells too, right? Like I think you were talking about McDavid, but Ovechkin sells too. Like
No, I meant Ovechkin.
okay, yeah, like he's a draw when the Capitals come to town. You go see them, right? Because that'll be a great ticket. That's a great team to watch. Those are pricey tickets to see.
Well, that's
It's
what I was
easier to-
excited to see when we went to watch in Arizona there. I was just watching Ovechkin the entire game.
I was too, but I couldn't focus.
I wonder
What was
why.
happening. And I'm like, why hasn't he scored? Because he was going to hit that 500 or whatever. Remember?
Yeah.
It was like,
Oh.
but he went on like a 3-game drought, and then it was
Yeah,
like,
he didn't look great. He was
a
just
game
coasting
after that.
around and bobbled the puck a bunch. And
I
used to
could
that.
make out Phil Kessel though because of his tape job on his stick, because he does the whole tape around the shaft, and you can see that anywhere on the ice. You can literally make it out. So true story. Well, since we're talking about the Capitals, why don't we talk about a little bit of a notorious or nefarious Capital, bad boy United, Tom Wilson, who has become a hot topic as of late for the incident involving the New York Rangers, where he was on top of Buchnevich, gave him a punch that resulted in a scrum. Him and Panarin got in it, and he slammed Panarin to the ice, or he lightly tossed him and Panarin faked it.
Oh, he bought
And as a result, has received a $5,000 fine. So, we talked about this. The fine is clearly on the punch, and there's nothing for the throwdown of Panarin. But where do you guys sit on this? I know for the most part, people are pretty fired up. I was too at first, but I think I've kind of changed my stance on this a little bit, and I will say why later on. But let's hear what your thoughts are on this thing and this player and where he stands.
Well, at first I was fired up too. I was like, why is the league trying to get safer and not doing anything? It kind of goes against everything that's being touted in terms of creating a safer sport, especially for star players. Panarin, star player. And, I think back to, George Peros being in player safety for the first year. And it was a little hit that Cogliano had. It was the head to shoulder. And he was on that Iron Man streak, and he was suspended a game for it. Now, to me, this is way worse than that. You've really injured a player. He's done for the season, even though that season doesn't matter. still like it's a marquee player with the New York Rangers organization and within the league, and he's done. And Wilson doesn't miss a game. He pays pennies out of his pocket because let's be honest, that $5,000, he's not going to notice that. And another thing is like you avoid further injuries by having him out of the game. What happened next game? Line brawl. There's, 6 guys fighting off the face-off. And then there's another fight later with Tom Wilson, right? Tom Wilson leaves with an undisclosed injury, right? Hurt pride, probably. Well, like, where's the line? Now the players are actually policing the game, which is taking it back to what hockey used to be before, which is kind of cool to see once in a while. But you've pissed off a whole organization that's calling for the firing of George Peros as well. And then ultimately they got fired and it set off a whole domino effect of firing. But I don't know. I think
a little bit of weird stuff there, but we'll talk about that.
No, exactly. But it was handled poorly on all accounts, I would say.
Let's jump to you, Ryan.
I'm kind of like you, Baron, in terms of when I first saw the play, I was shocked at Tom Wilson and everything he was doing on the ice, and that it didn't result in a suspension. When I watched it again and again, I agreed with the Department of Player Safety in terms of the Panarin throw. It was like a tussle between 2 guys, and Wilson's just stronger, and he was able to throw him down. And I mean, unfortunately, Panarin didn't have his helmet on, but it wasn't Wilson who yanked his helmet off and then threw him down. So I was fine with that being, deemed okay. It was the punch I thought was really dirty. Buchnevich, God, that name is hard to say. Buchnevich, he was in a very vulnerable position. He was laying down, stomach down on the ice, face down on the ice. His arms were like by his back, and he just gave him a shot in the head. And I mean, I know there's been a lot of guys saying, it's really not that bad of a play there. It wouldn't have hurt him that much. And, he didn't even hit him in the face. It was like back of the head or shoulder or something. I've heard all that. And maybe in some ways I'd be okay with it just being a fine. But here's the thing is he was just suspended for 7 games in March. Like he had just come back from a 7-game suspension, and he's pulling this off. And in my mind, the whole point of suspending players is, number 1, punishment, but number 2, sending a message that you got to be on your best behavior and to protect the rest of the players in the league. And he shouldn't be given the benefit of the doubt after he's been suspended for 7 games just a couple months earlier. That should factor in. So maybe it was only worth a fine, but because of his previous history, I think he should have gotten more. Like, really, I think they need to establish some sort of system where, if they're suspended and let's say they get like 3 games, if they're suspended again with a certain amount of time, it starts at 3 games and you work your way up. And the players eventually have to work off their debt after, having seasons, or a certain amount of time of not committing any sort of flagrant plays, then that term can kind of start to come off. If Wilson had already 7 games, it should have started at 7 games, regardless of how bad or good it was. If they found it crossed a line and was deemed dangerous, which they did because they fined him, then it should have been 7+1 or 7+ fine or something like that.
Right?
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get to.
That's an interesting idea. Sunjay, final thoughts on this incident?
I only saw the play once, to be honest with you, and it looked pretty dirty to me. So I know you guys said on initial review, you guys were like, let's suspend him. Maybe I need to watch it a couple more times, but for me, $5,000 fine is nothing. It's nothing. Like I said, Lucic last year got a 2-game suspension for punching a guy, and this guy punches and does the body slam. Like, what's next? The people's elbow? Like, what's going to stop this guy? So for me, I would have given him at least like 5 games. But, the one thing I was thinking is this is a shortened season. So maybe they're like, well, 56 games, you suspend him for 1 game. that's like 1.5 games in a regular season. You know what I mean? So maybe they're like, well, we don't want to like, suspend him again or do something. So maybe that's what factored into it. But for me, just looking at the play for the initial time I saw it, definitely suspension worthy.
Okay, I want to clarify a little bit, and I think I'm going to clarify your stance too here, Ryan, which is I don't think a $5,000 fine was enough. What I'm saying is I don't think it was as bad as everyone made it out to be. And I'll make you these 2 points. Well, I'll make you this 1 point first before I make a jump to the next segment, which is this. Panarin jumped into a fight, right? You don't always match up with someone of equal skill. Whenever something happens, if you look, and I'll just use an example, whenever there's a scrum and stuff, if McDavid's on the outside of it, he puts his arm around someone, but he's never grabbing and engaging. Panarin jumped on Tom Wilson's back. If you're Tom Wilson, do you know who's on your back? Probably not. Then you're fighting, and then you're scrum.
Can I create an analogy here?
Sure.
Okay. Royal Rumble back in the day, Bob Backlund runs into the ring. Diesel cleared it, grabs him, throws him right out. Tom Wilson, Diesel, Bob Backlund.
Yeah, but that's essentially, like, I think that's
Panarin.
A stronger guy got a weaker guy, and they tussled. And it wasn't one of those things where it's just like, hey, I'm holding on to you just so we can stop this, or hey, I'm pulling you back, leave him alone. It was like a big guy versus a little guy. And whatever, like, they haven't even disclosed actually what Panarin's injury is. They just said it's done for the season. And so
it is hurt pride.
And it's bad.
Right here.
But it is bad. But that's why I think, like, does he deserve more than a $5,000 fine? Yeah. Does he deserve a 7-game suspension again? Probably not. Because other guys, and I think this is the point that really got me on it, if it wasn't Tom Wilson and you saw 2 guys wrestling and one throw into the ice, would you think anything of it? In a regular fist fight in hockey, so knuckles off, like gloves off, knuckles, bear boxing fight, guys get slammed to the ice all the time, and that's just part of the fight.
Right.
And no one's like, suspend the crap out of that guy because after 3 punches he threw him to the ground. I just think.
But that's the argument I was saying, though, is you can't ignore that it's Tom Wilson because he's pulled this stunt off numerous times.
Agreed.
So if you're a danger to other players and star players, that shouldn't be ignored. It shouldn't be, oh, well, you have to treat him like any other player. He's not any other player anymore. He is a dangerous offender on the ice.
Tom Wilson's a star. Tom Wilson's absolutely, he is a star. And I'll make this point. The next segment we're going to talk about is McDavid getting reaching this plateau here of getting 100 points in a season. We talked about Tom Wilson first. And if you pay attention to most media, most people watched that next game where there was that huge line brawl. That was even I watched it. I don't know if you guys watched it. We all looked for clips of it. That was the most interesting game that occurred south of the border this year. Okay. Like, that's the thing. So it still made for great entertainment. At the end of the day, that's what he's done. He sold the game in some aspect, whether we like it or not, or agree with it or not. That happened because of him. So,
right. Well, I mean,
$5,000 you can hurt somebody. It's,
that goes back to the whole argument about fighting in hockey in the first place. Obviously, it's entertaining. I think we all can say we enjoy watching fighting in hockey. It's a lot of fun to watch, but we know the dangers of concussions. And now there's the argument about player safety, and it's safety versus entertainment.
But you have to be careful anyways, because like a body check can cause a concussion. Like, boxers don't have concussions after every fight, right? Like, not every. So, I mean, honestly, there's a little bit of a disconnect there, and it's tough. But let's move on to more happy news, at least from a Oiler perspective, and it should actually be from a fan perspective, which is Connor McDavid reaching 100 points in, how many games was it now? I can't remember the exact amount. How many games?
100 points in 53 games.
53 games. He's now at 104, I want to say.
Yeah, he is.
And if you adjust for era, that's the second highest points per game in league history outside of Howie Morenz, the Stratford Streak, the great Montreal Canadian who died of a broken heart and a broken leg, and a guy who played essentially when there was less teams than there is now, and teams that don't exist anymore, and like lit up the league. It's the second highest ever. It's higher than Gretzky. It's higher than Lemieux. Like, it's incredible. And there's a lot of anti stuff because, like, especially from people outside of the market, because of the fact that this is occurring in a smaller divisional play-in round. But let's talk about how amazing this accomplishes. And I want to go to Sunjay first because he's so close to it. He's so close to this amazing feat, to see this awesomeness from such a distance and to know how close he is to greatness for the second time in his life. I just want to hear his thoughts on this accomplishment.
Okay. Here's the thing. Okay. Bob Hartley, coach of the Calgary Flames, used to have this saying, and it was the mantra of the team, said, always earned, never given. The Edmonton Oilers mantra is never earned, always given. Because you guys have gotten 2 generational talents doing
Hey, we traded for Gretzky. I mean, like, you could have done that.
You won him in a poker game.
And what a hand. Okay, but enough. Talk about how great he is. Go ahead. Get it off your chest.
What can I say? I mean, he's the best player in the league, and he plays for my biggest rival. How fun is it? Not very fun, to be honest with you. It's like, when like Jordan was like tearing it up for the Bulls, and there's like Utah Jazz fans, and like it's like,
Dude,
it's like
Pacer fan. Pacer
well,
fan.
we're not even like the Pacers, because like we're not even making the playoffs. So we would be like the Raptors fans or the Vancouver Grizzlies fans of that era. Like we're just like, yeah, maybe one day. So I mean, I don't know. It's super incredible. First of all, good for him. Amazing talent, amazing player. I can't wait till he wears the red at the Olympics next year, so I can actually cheer for him. But other than that, I mean, I'm not going to cheer for him, but he's a hell of a player, and he's the best player in the league, and I hate that he's playing in blue. So,
and orange.
Yeah, blue and orange.
Not blue and white.
No. I mean, if he played for Toronto, we would never hear anything ever again except for McDavid talk. It would just be 24/7. TSN would just everything would be just McDavid. So I guess there is a silver lining there.
It is funny that you mentioned this, because when we talk about that and that focus, that the real split has for the longest time been, is blank better than McDavid? So 2 years ago, it was is Matthews better than McDavid was the initial start. And then this year, heading into this season, it was, is McKinnon? And shout out to Colton and everyone else in the other group chat I'm part of who told me about how much better McKinnon is than McDavid. And I think this just shows at this particular moment in time, no one's even close to him. Even Draisaitl, who was the best player in the league last year, whether people like it or not, isn't on the same level as McDavid. Like, he just isn't. And it has been an interesting season. But I think it's great. Like, it's must-watch hockey. Like, whether they're playing Ottawa, whether they're playing like a game at the end of the season, that you have a good chance of seeing 1 to 2 highlight reel pieces every night, and that's actually the best part of it for me.
There's a reason I was willing to spend $200 to sit in the nosebleed section to see the Oilers and Leafs play, and it wasn't to see my Leafs. I had seen them play already before. It was to see McDavid. I want to see him live. It's entertaining. It's incredible. It's jaw-dropping. This player is not only the best player in the league right now, but I think already I would say he's better than Crosby. And I think he's getting up there right along the greats with Gretzky and Mario. Like, Baron, you're already talking about how, like, era adjusted this season is second all time. I mean, that's assuming he would get actually 155 points in the season.
Right. It's for the whole, if it was 80 some games.
Exactly. So
Howie Moran's never played that many either. So
yeah. And so, I mean, he has to have a few more seasons like this, but he's taking his game to another level, right? Like, back when there was the debate, is it McKinnon or McDavid? I mean, there was a debate there because they were close in points, and McKinnon, defensively was better. Like, McDavid, the big knock against McDavid was that he was horrible defensively, but he's been good this year. He's been good defensively this year, and then he's taken that offensive production up to another level. And we haven't seen this gap of separation since like Yager and Lemieux days. Mm-hmm. And we have to sit. Like, I know he's not on my team, but I have to kind of sometimes remind myself to sit back and appreciate this, because you only get to see players like this once in a while. Like, Crosby was great. Yes. Ovechkin was great, but this is a whole nother level. And like I said, I think by the time he's done, if he keeps up this kind of level, he'll be mentioned right up there with the greats of all time.
Adam, here's your chance to gush.
My God, we've got the greatest player in the world, period. There is no conversation to be had about, who's better, McDavid or blank. You know, even if he took away all his goals this year, he's got more points than everyone except for Draisaitl. It's ridiculous. And guess who was called crazy at the beginning of the year when he said he'd have 104 points this year? Me. Guess who's got 104 points? Me.
Didn't you also say Ryan Nugent-Hopkins would be like second in the league scoring?
That was a bold prediction.
Leon Biswas,
That was a bold prediction. God damn, you guys can rain on my parade. But here was my prediction. My prediction was 32 goals, 72 assists for 104 points. He has 33 goals and 71 assists.
You heard it here, folks. Points. Adam was wrong.
Yeah. Way off, guys. Way off.
Oh, God.
Okay, but speaking of people, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other thing I'd like to point out is he is 4th in the league in points per game played of all time, behind Gretzky, Lemieux, and Bossy.
I will say that like players did go down.
They go down, and that all has to be taken into account. And like I said, you know, he didn't play a full 82 game season and all that type of stuff. You need more seasons like this to be able to actually say
no more seasons like this, please. No,
please.
One was enough. One was enough.
Okay, but speaking of, like, McDavid's taken an extra gear, like, step this year. He's taken an extra gear. Someone else who found an extra gear was Auston Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And there was a lot of talk early on that he could get 50 goals in 50 games, and injuries, so forth, that kind of derailed that. But what we did see is the evolution of him to become essentially the best shooter, the best goal scorer in the NHL, something that he essentially has surpassed Patrick Kane and Alexander Ovechkin in. And at the start of this year, I would have bet Ovechkin would have been a better lock for the Rocket Richard, but it is very much obvious that Auston Matthews has taken that step. So let's talk about the accomplishment that is that, which is 40 goals in what is he? He's played slightly less games because of his injury.
He's 41 goals now, in 55 games.
All right, let's hear about it.
Well, I'll just get into like I was saying how McDavid, you know, has surpassed Crosby. I'm not going to say Matthews has surpassed Ovechkin yet, but if he played a 82 game season at this pace, he would have scored 66 goals, which would be higher than Ovechkin has ever scored. And an episode or two ago, we all agreed Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer of all time. So is Matthews on his way to becoming the greatest goal scorer of all time? He might not be the best player of all time. He might not be McDavid, but he can put the puck in the net better than anyone.
Right. Might not be McDavid.
Wow.
He is not McDavid.
In terms of goal scoring, just like how, you know, everyone agrees Crosby was the best player of that generation. Ovechkin, the best goal scorer. McDavid is the best player of this generation. Matthews, best goal scorer. And I think both players are a step above McDavid or Crosby and Ovechkin. I'm more certain about Ovechkin than I am about Crosby. More certain about Crosby than Ovechkin at this point. Their goals per game, Matthews is slightly lower, but I will say, earlier on in his career, he was kind of handicapped by Babcock. He only got to play like 18 minutes a game. He wasn't used like a real superstar. He only got to play half the power play time, and they separated them into 2 equal parts. Now under Keefe, he's playing 21 minutes a game. He's getting to play with Marner. Babcock never let him play with Marner. And Nylander's a good player, but Marner is a better player, a better playmaker. He's getting to play with Marner. The power play is still a work in progress. If they can get that going, watch his goal totals go up even higher.
That power play is atrocious. Like, it honestly started off so good. Like, people I work with, I think I've said this already, we're talking about how the power play made no sense to them and how it was going to be a terrible power play for the Leafs. And off the bat, the Leafs were just firing, like scoring. And it has just slowly, and then all of a sudden, like, there was a point here where they had, what was it, like 1 goal and 40 chances? Like, it literally,
they were outscored.
Yeah.
Their power play was outscored at
How
one
does
point.
that happen with that lineup?
Yeah.
Honestly, man, it was they were clicking, and then Simmons was their net front presence. He was amazing. He got hurt. He was out. Matthews was their sniper. He got hurt. He was out. And it just crumbled after that. And it just hasn't rebounded. Like, Simmons hasn't really been the same offensively since he's come back. It took Matthews a bit to get going. But I don't know, man. Like, for a little while there, it looked like they were starting to catch fire again. They started scoring some goals, generating a lot of chances. But these last couple of games, it just looks horrible again. And I honestly have no answer as to why this team that is dominant at 5-on-5 offensively are so pitiful on the power play.
You got to be like, imagine if like they watch the other team slash a guy and the ref's arm go up and be like, oh no.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
take it back, ref. It's okay. It's okay. They can do that to me. It's
I
fine.
wish we had
I like
Tyson, I wish we had Tyson Berry back here.
it. No,
Power
he
play.
didn't help out either.
Highest goal scoring defenseman in the league. Just saying. Go ahead, Adam.
I have two questions in terms of Matthews being the so-called greatest goal scorer of this generation. The first one is, can he stay healthy enough?
That's a good point.
And number two is, I know this is a homer comment, but will Draisaitl push for that as well?
I'll take it as the other Oiler fan. Leon, who was very close to winning the Rocket one year. I think he finished one goal behind Ovechkin.
Yeah.
But he hasn't hit that number in goal scoring since. Even the year that he
Right.
won the Hart, he wasn't up there. So I think like Leon's can pass like no one's. He's got a wicked shot. His shot reminds me of Ovechkin's because he's essentially the opposite. Like Ovechkin runs on that left circle and just hammers it. And if you pay attention where Draisaitl scores in the power play, same spot, opposite side on the right. Like he can just wire it from there.
Yeah.
But like, do I think he's a goal scorer? Oh yeah. I just don't know that he's Auston Matthews. Like Auston Matthews looks like he's putting as little pressure on the stick as possible, and it's whipping and just like launching into the top. And man, oh man.
And he could score so many different ways. Like when he couldn't actually shoot because his wrist hurt so much, he was tipping pucks in or doing the wraparound. Like he can find so many different ways to score. He has such an arsenal. Like Ovechkin, he had that one spot on the, like you said, Barron, and for some reason, no one could ever figure it out on how to stop it on the penalty kill. It's like, you know where it's going, and they still couldn't stop it. And that's where he scored the majority of his goals. Matthews, it's all over the place. He doesn't have like a one spot that he seems to defer to. It's a variety. But you're right, Adam, in terms of durability. Like he has struggled to stay healthy, and that will also determine where he ends up. But
well, just because we spoke about him a bit, and he was going to be talked about here too. Bob Stauffer put out this tweet about 4 days ago, which was that Leon Draisaitl has a chance to do something this season that only happened once before since the NHL began counting plus or minus back in the 59-60 season. Lead the NHL in plus and minus and power play goals. He's currently first in both with a 30 plus and a 14 power play goals. Wayne Gretzky did it in 83-84 with 78 and 20 power play goals. God, Gretzky was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But Leon Draisaitl, who like I think is once again also an amazing hockey player, the German Gretzky hit 500 career points, which is also amazing. He's the highest pointed German player of all time. And he's done it pretty damn fast, actually, given his career. He's already won a Hart Trophy and Ted Lindsay. So he's already built up some impressive hardware himself, and it's really given Edmonton that 1-2 punch. But I think he deserves his own accolades. And it's crazy, on the night McDavid scores his 100th point, Draisaitl hits his, and Adam Larson hits in their 600th game. And it's a nothing event for those guys because McDavid's is such a big accomplishment. Well, let's just give him a little bit of love here for what he's done. Sunjay, you're close.
I think this is going to cause locker room dissent. Draisaitl should be getting the respect he deserves. And the fact that McDavid takes all the spotlight, you can't help but think Draisaitl's in that locker room looking over at all the media talking to McDavid saying, what about me? What about me? Messier had that moment when he moved from Edmonton to New York, and he's like, hey, what about me? Look, I won the Stanley Cup in 94. Thank you very much. So Draisaitl is going to get traded now. He's going to ask for a trade. He's going to say, show me some love. Show me the respect you deserve, because this is ridiculous.
Oh my God.
He's not getting any of it. Oilers fans are taking him for granted. There's
He's going
dissent
to go to
in the locker
Calgary.
room.
Yeah.
No.
It's funny you mentioned that he's so pissed off, because you know who the happiest player on the ice was when Connor got his 100th point?
You?
Leon Draisaitl. He was
Crocodile tears.
pumped.
Fake. And I don't believe you, because that's probably Puljujärvi. That's probably Puljujärvi. He's always so happy every time someone
Long
scores.
tongue.
So this is my only Edmonton Oilers merchandise that I have in the man cave. Everything else is Leafs.
You should get
And
more.
It's
the reason
for a guy you interviewed all the time.
that's
Yeah.
why I got it. So Sunjay, you probably didn't know this. So I used to be a reporter for CBC in Prince Albert back when he and Josh Morrissey played for the Raiders. So I had the opportunity to interview Draisaitl. He's a great guy.
Give me the dirt. What did he do? Like, let's cancel Draisaitl so he can't play for the Oilers.
I got nothing bad to say. No, man. The thing.
That's what you told me off the air. You said
Sunjay, shh, quiet. And oh man, he was so much fun to watch. So him and Morrissey, oh my God, like they were so much fun to watch in junior hockey.
He's the best player in PA since Madame.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was so much. He was just so good. Like this passing, his shooting, everything, just so unbelievable. And so congrats to him on 500 points. I kicked myself for not getting like a photo with him and like a signed jersey, because I thought it'd be unprofessional. I hate myself now. Who cares about professional? I could have had that back here with me posing beside him with the signed PA Raider jersey, but c'est la vie.
Too cool. Hey man, would you like my autograph? Maybe a picture? Oh, no,
no.
I got a job to do, just like you.
Are you trying to bribe a reporter here? Now you get a negative story.
All right, so as promised, this is a very special episode, a crap on Sunjay's team episode. No, I'm kidding. This is the delayed offside playoff preview.
Come on, Adam. Where's your sound effects?
Well, playoff preview.
That's actually really good. I have to
Sounds like
say.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. Yeah, right off a video game or something.
Yeah.
Adam, you missed your calling as a voice actor.
Flawless victory.
Yeah, shit, man. That's exactly it.
I liked Mammality better. That was the one I was
As we jump into the playoff brackets,
Hold on. This is breaking. The Colorado Avalanche have won the President's Trophy.
Congrats to
Wow.
them.
When's it? I guess
McKinnon wasn't even in the lineup.
Tampa Bay was the last team, I guess. So they won it last year, and they were the President's Trophy team, correct?
I think so.
Because generally, it's almost like a semi-curse. isn't
No,
it?
Tampa didn't have the President's Trophy last year, did they?
Who did then?
Toronto.
I'll look it up. No.
Anyways, welcome to the playoff preview. So we're going to start here by looking at the Mass Mutual East Division playoff series. So we're going to talk about these a little bit, show you some of the fantastic graphics created for this segment, and take our thoughts as to who wins this and in how many games. First up is the Eastern champions, the Pittsburgh Penguins, against the fourth place New York Islanders. Let's take a look at this series. So at the start of the year, Pittsburgh wasn't actually doing very well. They had a lot of goaltending issues. There was their GM quit on them. He was like, screw this team, I'm done. They brought in Brian Burke and former Philadelphia Flyer Ron Hextall. And this team has actually started cooking and has been on a hell of a streak here. And it already climbed their way to the top. At the same time, the New York Islanders bring in a bunch of at the time they weren't, New Jersey Devils to help supplement their team, and haven't quite really had the success that they hoped that they would have when they moved into the lineup. This team is definitely a defensive specialist team, and they are going to play against an offensive elite team. So let's take a look at this matchup head-to-head here. What are people thinking? Is this going to be a fun, exciting series? Is this one where it's a clear-cut victory? Is this going to be a hard-fought battle? Who are we picking and what?
Well, I think it's going to be boring. To be honest, the type of hockey that the Islanders have been playing so far this year and that they've been playing under Trotz for the past couple of years has been very slow. It's been very calculated and like grab your chances when you get them type. Like, you know, you got a guy like Matthew Barzal, who should be a marquee player in the NHL with a number of points, but you see that this type of system has kind of stifled that. I don't think that they can beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, especially since they've acquired Jeff Carter and he's been playing so well with them. So
trades I never thought would actually be good and pay out. That's probably one of them.
Yeah, and that's why I think that the Pittsburgh Penguins will win this series.
How many games?
4.
Ooh, sweep. Nice. With the Islanders at our midway point when we were predicting who comes out of the divisions, I picked the Islanders. I believed in them at that time, but I don't believe in them anymore. They just haven't been the same offensively since they lost Anders Lee. Before the injury, they were 17th in goals for per game, and since then they've dropped to 24th. Like, their offense has sputtered. They picked up Kyle Palmieri and Zajac to try to help with that, but Palmieri's only gotten 4 points in 17 games. He hasn't been able to fill Anders Lee's shoes, and that plus the fact that the Pittsburgh Penguins have owned them during the regular season, I also think Pittsburgh wins this. I say in 5.
Sunjay?
Pittsburgh has the actual Hart Trophy winner in Sidney Crosby. The way he was able to take a team with so much turmoil and win the division.
Rossi over here. Nice.
Edmonton didn't even win the division, whereas Pittsburgh did. So, checkmark Crosby. I think they just have too much depth. They have too much depth, too much talent, too much experience that I think the Islanders are going to try wear down the Penguins, but I don't think it's going to work. I have a little bit more faith in the Islanders. I think it'll go 6 than you guys, but I still think Pittsburgh comes out on top.
I'm going to agree with Sunjay here. I think Pittsburgh's going to take this series.
You think Crosby's the Hart Trophy winner? Thank you.
Everyone heard it here first. Barron agrees.
I said I agree with you. I didn't say I was stupid. But I do think the Penguins are going to win this series. But I do think it's going to be a tougher series than people think. The Islanders play tight checking hockey, and in playoff hockey is different hockey. And I think that's the thing that everyone always forgets. The Islanders were a good team all year. They're consistent. They're just not amazing. And when it comes down to goaltending, I will say that for the most part, the Penguins goaltending has never been as consistent as the Islanders goaltending has been. So it's a little bit up. I say 6 games as well. Next up is in our Mass Mutual East Division is the Washington Capitals versus the Boston Bruins. Washington placed second in the league, while Boston with third. 77 points versus 73. Take a look at that fancy, beautiful, sexy graphic. All right, so let's take a look at here. Things that stand out right away from these stats would probably be the 5-on-5 goals, 4 and 60, 4th versus 12th. But this has been a big change occurring here with the Boston Bruins. It's actually since the acquisition of Taylor Hall, we are seeing a team that is taking a lot more offense forward here. There's a team that struggled to score early on, but since they've acquired him, has actually increased their scoring dramatically. And he's fit into that system really well. The Capitals have had a little bit of a turbulent season in the sense of players going in and out of the lineup, some injuries and so forth, suspensions, as we talked about now. But we're looking for what is going to set up to be a very nasty playoff series between these two foes. Who do we like and why? Let's start with Sunjay, Capital fan.
Yeah.
What do you got and why?
I think this is going to be one of the best series of the first round. One of the top 2, in my opinion. Entertainment-wise, this is great hockey. Like, I don't even know who's going to win. If I had to choose, if my life was on the line, I would say Washington takes this in 7, but it's going to be a close series.
You really don't like your life.
I mean, Ovechkin, you got him. How can you bet against the guy? He's lovable. Backstrom's back, and I think Capitals are going to take this.
I'm sorry, I didn't put the lovability factor into the graphics. I'll make sure to do that next time.
Yeah, please sharpen up here, Ryan.
I've taken enough beating, okay?
I'll agree with Sunjay in that. I think it's going to be a tight series. I think both teams are very evenly matched. But I think Boston, their offense is, like you said, Barron, has really come on since they brought on Taylor Hall. And I think that is going to help sway the balance because they were already better defensively. And now their offense is just right up there with Washington. So I think this is going to go 7 games, but I'm going to go with Bruins.
Well, I also think that this is going to go 7 games, but it's hard for me to do this, but I agree with the Flames fan. I believe that the Washington Capitals are going to win this series in 7. I just think that, the depth, the loss of TJ Oshie's father is also going to put a fire under that team's ass, and they're going to want to try to win it for TJ Oshie too. And he's been playing unreal ever since he came back from that. So.
Sunjay just left. He's just like, I'm done.
He couldn't believe that Adam agreed with him.
He's just like
passed out at his computer.
I don't know what happened. It was so weird. My computer just froze up there.
Well, I'm gonna agree here with Ryan. I say that this is Boston is coming in hot. They're coming in on all cylinders, and that's what you want to do going into playoff hockey. I think they are going to present a hell of a challenge here. And I think, honestly, they got experience down the lineup. This is a group that knows its window is coming to an end. And if they're going to produce, they got to do it now. So I'm going to say the Bruins I'll take the bold one. I'll say the Bruins in 5.
Ooh.
Fortune favors the bold, people. Fortune favors the bold. We're going to jump next to the Discover the Central Division, where the top team, the Carolina Hurricanes with 80 points in the division, take on the lowly Nashville Predators with 64 points. Nashville being the last team in this group to sneak in, where it was kind of down to between them and Dallas heading into the finals. Predators have a really terrible record against the Hurricanes. However, it should be noted that the Predators are coming in on a hell of a goaltending push right now, led by UC Saros, who has an unbelievable record in his last 25 games. I think it's 16 wins, and has actually helped catapult this team back up, despite the lack of production from their top centers. Carolina is a team that for a long time had a lot of push, where people thought that they were going to be a growing team, a strong team. And in the end, they're finally coming to fruition here. With some of their big players and performance. Let's see where we think the panel matches up on this matchup. Who do we have going and how many games and why?
I can start her off. I think this series is going to be pretty low scoring. Neither team is necessarily great offensively at 5-on-5, and 2 stout defensive teams. Where you might see an eruption in goals is when the Canes are on the power play, because they have an elite power play unit, and the Predators are terrible on the penalty kill. And I think it's those special teams that's going to sway this one. And I don't think it's actually going to be very close at all. I'm going to go Canes in 5.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Pilon. I think the Hurricanes have been just too good. And, Predators, sure, they made a push, but I think they're out in 5 as well.
Every time Adam agrees with someone, they leave. Sanjay turned off his computer. Pilon walks away. What's going on here?
Kiss of death.
Go ahead, Sanjay.
I'm going to take the Hurricanes. I think they're a really good team. They're young, they're fast, they're exciting to watch. And Nashville, I think they just squeaked in, but I think they probably used a lot of energy to get in, whereas Carolina kind of just coasted at the end and conserved. So I'm going to go Hurricanes in 4.
I'll take the long one. I'm going to say Hurricanes in 6 here. I think that goaltending is going to squeak out, but I don't think Nashville has the forwards to do enough damage here to do much. So Hurricanes will be stepping themselves back up to a next level here. Oh, yeah, I guess I have to read who's next in the division. I'm just like sitting here waiting. That takes us to what I think is going to be the dish du jour of the entire NHL playoffs. This is the This is the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is crazy to see that head-to-head stat that the Lightning are 3-5-0 against the Panthers this season. But this is a series that essentially that in the end has ended in a lot of fighting, a lot of pressure. These two teams are going at each other. There's a lot of 8 rivals have never actually played together or played against each other and played series in their entire history. So this is a big moment for both these franchises, probably more specifically the Panthers. But in the shadow, lurking is a potential top scoring winger in Kuznetsov. Kucherov. Yeah. Returning to the Lightning because magically he's healthy on the day that the season ends and playoffs start where there's no salary cap. Seems perfectly normal. So all of a sudden the Lightning are getting one of the top elite players in the NHL back into their lineup as they head into this heated series against the Panthers with new elite goal scorer Sam Bennett.
Calgary or Sunjay should start this one off.
Yeah, man.
Calgary.
Just calls you by your
what can I
city.
say?
Hey there, Calgary.
Playoff Bennett. You know, everyone in Calgary, regular season would be harping on Sam Bennett. Playoffs come in, he would be the best forward every single year. So Florida gets him when he's averaging about like 1.5 points per game. If you throw in playoff Bennett with that, he's going to be a beast. I'm taking Florida. I'm taking Florida in 6 in this. I think they're going to dethrone the champs. I think a lot of people have to remember that Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup later in the year than normal. So they had to go through that. They had a shortened off season. They still did pretty good. Like they still did really good in the regular season, but some of those legs might be getting a little tired. And I'm going to go with the Panthers in 6 on this one.
I really struggled with deciding who I think is going to win this one. I think just because there's so many question marks here. So like Barron said, you have Kucherov coming back, but he hasn't played all year. Is he going to be the Kucherov from last year, or is he going to take some time to get his legs under him and get going, right? Same with Steven Stamkos. How healthy is he? Like he's supposed to be able to come back for the playoffs, but you know, what condition is he in? Hedman and McDonough both sat out at the end of the season, and Hedman's play really fell off at the end of the season. It looked like he was playing hurt.
He's injured. Yeah, it's confirmed that he is injured this year, but he's going to play through it.
He's going to play through it. So, I mean, Hedman was such a huge reason why they were able to win the cup. If you don't have 100% Hedman, how is that going to affect the back end? So, I mean, there's a lot of questions there with Tampa's biggest weapons. And then with Florida, I mean, they're out without Ekblad, which is huge. But, you know, Weegar has stepped up in his absence. He's been phenomenal this season. And Brandon Montour, who they picked up, has actually stepped in really nicely for them as well. And then you already talked about Sam Bennett, who's like been on a scoring spree, 15 points in 10 games. So like I could see this series starting out with Florida winning a bunch of games at the start, like maybe even like 3 games in a row until Tampa starts kind of getting their legs under them and coming back. I think they push it to 7, but then I think Florida wins that 7th game. So I'm going to go Florida in 7.
Adam, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Florida's going to be a little hungrier than Tampa, who just won it last year. They got something to prove. They're going up against a team that, has been the better team in their state for years. And, Barkov, Huberdeau, they're top players like Sam Bennett, they're just going to come out flying. And I honestly think that we might see the goalie Bob that they need in the playoffs. And I'm going to say Florida Panthers in 6.
This is going to be a couple of random questions, but is Bob their starting goaltender right now? Or are they running with Knight or the other guy? Like they've had a hell of a goaltending tandem outside of Bob going here.
Yeah.
The other question I have for you guys is if Kucherov is 70% of who he normally is, he's still a good player. Good. That's the scary part.
He's still good.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Like I look at this and I'm like, man, to me the Panthers should be the better team. They should win this. But I'm like, oh, there's so many questions on the Tampa, like whether Kucherov comes back and he's that good. I think Hedman is really a huge loss. Like I really do.
Big. Yeah.
Like this is a guy who wins the Norris Trophy probably hands down most years. And I got to wonder, like Stamkos too. Here's a guy who's always kind of injured at this point in his career. I think same thing. I think you all make good points on this, but I think Florida's hungrier too. I think they got stuff to prove. There's some contract years here, and I think they really do want it. And I think there will be a bit of a cup hangover here. It is very rare to have a team repeat twice. So I'm going to say Florida, and I'm going to say in 6 games.
I have to say I'm shocked all 4 of us went Florida.
I think it's the underdog story too. You like it.
Yeah.
They have more points, but no one thinks of them as the better team.
Well, Tampa's the reigning champs, and they have a superstar coming back. Like it's tough to bet against them. Like I was really like, oh, do I actually say Florida? But everyone else said Florida. I'm shocked. Also, I want to say, who was all picking Sam Bennett for their fantasy hockey pool? No, just me.
Are you running it? But I do think this is out of all the hockey games occurring in the first round, this is probably the must-watch one. Like if you're going to watch if you're not a hockey fan, you're going to step into a series. This is the one I think will be.
This one will be good. Yeah,
because the hate is strong. Like it is visceral. They do not like each other.
Yeah.
And
This
whoever
one,
walks out of it
Boston,
will be good.
Washington. I think those are going to be the two most interesting.
There's going to be some really great first round matchups.
Yeah, I
really
think so
is.
too. They've done a good job of how this has kind of turned out.
Yeah.
We're going to jump first then to the Honda. Do you want to do Honda West?
No, because I don't have. Well, we can.
Sorry.
I don't have
No,
graphics for those, but
we'll
that's fine.
save those. We're going to save the Honda West division for Monday. So if you're a Colorado fan, just know that they've won the President's Trophy and you have
just done
the fourth best player in the league and McKinnon, and that's great. But we're going to talk about the Scotia North because it's been decided. And Toronto, who had a strong lead in this division from the start, will be playing against the last team to clinch the play. Honestly, it's disgusting to me to see 59 points under the Canadiens for the sole fact that it was literally predicted you would need probably something like 63 to make the playoffs this year, like 60 some, and they didn't. And a lot of those are on loser points, which is tough.
They still have a game left, though, right?
Say that again. Yeah, they do. They have a game.
So they could get up to 60.
Yeah, it's
or
true.
61.
At this
somewhere around
stage,
there.
they're at this, though. And they have a ton of injuries. So the Leafs are once again getting better. They have one of the worst power plays. Their PK actually appears to be pretty terrible. But luckily, so does the Montreal Canadiens. So it's not really a big deal in there. What we are seeing, though, is that separation in talent. The Montreal Canadiens have tons of injuries. Gallagher's been out. Shea Weber suffering injury. Carey Price is out. I'm not sure when he's back. My suspicion is that he will play the first playoff game against the Leafs. Will be Carey Price's return. Auston Matthews' goal scoring is on another level. Marner, and they're sorting out the second line, I think, with Foligno now playing on the second line. Is that right? Or is he going to be playing on the third line?
He played on the second line last game, so it's looking like
probably
that,
likely.
potentially.
So we have this matchup, and this is the first time in how many years, Ryan, that the Leafs
42 years.
First time in 42 years.
Wow.
So all your grandparents are going to wheel themselves or take their strollers and walk themselves to the TV and remember the good old days of yelling about this as we see the Toronto Maple Leafs for the first time in that many years take on the Montreal Canadiens. Who do we have in this series and why?
I'll start us off. Pilon, he's been throwing some shade at Carey Price all season. And, what goes around comes around. And I think Carey Price has been listening to this podcast.
He's going to get hot because of me.
He's got something to prove that he's still the best goalie in come playoff time. So you add the fact that they beat Pittsburgh last year. They added Toffoli, who's a scoring beast. They have Shea Weber back there. And it's the simple fact that throughout history, Montreal, much like Boston, they always beat Toronto, right? Like they always beat Boston, no matter where the teams are in the standings. Montreal just always finds a way to beat Boston like 90% of the time, right? So I'm going to go Montreal in 7.
The hell, Sunjay? I thought you were jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah, well, I didn't want this to be like all kumbaya, lovey-dovey. I saw that I was jumping on the bandwagon until I saw the opening video.
Fair enough.
Oh my
Fair
God.
enough.
No, pissed off Sunjay is now my favorite. He's taking Adam digs at everything tonight, and it's hysterical. Oh my God. You know what? I'm gonna go with also. I think Montreal might surprise Toronto. I don't think that they're going to win that series. I'm having a really difficult time picking a team, though, which is weird because I usually have a little bit of a premonition on who's going to win series, and it's usually pretty easy for me. But
which is why you've won how many playoff?
Yeah,
fantasy
what a
pools?
bold prediction! I pick playoffs all the time. That's why I have all my money and all this power and everything else because I'm so good at predicting things. Okay,
104
really
points.
Ryan
Do you
Nugent
know
Hopkins.
I predicted that McDavid would have 104 points on this season.
When did you
Anyway,
predict that anyways? Was that actually in one of our podcasts?
He actually predicted it online. He did.
Oh,
He
online?
did.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I tweeted it.
Yeah,
Okay.
he did. He really
Hands
did.
off.
Yeah,
Anyways, but yeah,
Continue.
so
you dicks.
use your powers. Use your powers and tell us. Come on, hurry up. Where's
Okay.
your hat?
I'm going to predict that this is the Montreal Canadiens in 7.
Unbelievable. You guys are doubting the kings of the North here. What the hell?
You know what?
Once
You know
again,
what
that
the problem
does not
is,
work out well
Elon?
for the king of the North. I just
You
want
know
you to
what
know
the
that.
problem is?
Eventually.
That's it. The problem is that they've rode this 18-wheeler. They don't have their license. They have crashed it before. They're going to crash
That was
it.
a completely different team.
You're
I will.
right.
I will say with the Montreal Canadiens, this was actually the one team for most of the season that I did not want the Leafs to play in the first round. You know, they're a great defensive team. They're an analytical darling. And at one point in the season, they were one of the top teams in the league in offense as well. But, you know, eventually that offense dried up. It ended up being more of a mirage. Like, they don't have that many elite scorers on this team. Price and Allen, they've been inconsistent in net all season long. And then it all kind of really fell apart. Like, they got COVID and they dealt with a number of injuries, and Drouin left for personal reasons. And really, they've basically limped into the playoffs. Like, how many games have they won this last stretch going to the playoffs? Not a lot. You know, the Leafs, they're a powerhouse at 5-on-5, offensively and defensively. Yeah, they're struggling on the power play right now. Their penalty kill over the year, not that great. Although since the trade deadline, it's really picked up at least. Yeah, the power play is an issue, but like Barron said, Montreal Canadiens special teams is nothing to write home about. So I see the Leafs dominating this one. I see them winning the series in 5.
Yeah, it's not a bad prediction, to be completely honest. But, you know, if you have a healthy Canadiens team, you know, we see the emergence of Cole Caulfield as well, who's come in and made a splash for them. I have to change my prediction because I was just kind of being a dick. I was. It's going to be Toronto in 6.
I'll go a little bit. I think one of the interesting points is that the Montreal Canadiens are built to be a playoff team, and that is the truth. Like, they are designed to be, like, there was I can't remember who the hell it was talking about this. It was I think TSN guy out of Montreal, that they were built to be like an antithesis to the Leafs, essentially, that they were built to be opposite of them, and they are in a lot of ways. So it makes for an interesting matchup. But I think the truth is right now, with the injuries, with the fact that this team is built essentially that if Carey Price is good, this team can do whatever the hell it wants. And he hasn't been good, and he's been injured, and that really leaves a lot of question marks up there. Now, if they can get away with all the dirty stuff that Corey Perry usually does and everything else, it's going to be a much tougher series on the Leafs than people think. Even if they win it in, let's say, 4 games, they're not going to walk easily through those 4 games. I really don't believe. But I do think at the end, the Leafs' depth, the way they've played, the goaltending, it just seems to be higher in all those things all season. And even though I thought Montreal would be the top team in the North, like, I can't see them beating the Leafs. I just can't. So I'm going to say the Leafs in 5.
I do want to say also the one point you made is, yeah, the Leafs of before were not really built for the playoffs, but Dubas changed all that in this offseason. He added a bunch of veterans. He added
old guys,
Foligno
yeah,
and Nash, like 2 really defensive guys to their lineup who can hit and grind as well. You know, they're not a soft team anymore. They are, I think, better built for the playoffs this year.
That's fair. I just think Montreal is like strong, heavy hitting, and I think
I hear you.
that they get away with a lot of cheap stuff.
Yep.
And come playoffs, those things don't get called.
No, that's right.
And if they can shut down McDavid, they can shut down Matthews. Maybe they haven't quite yet, but I have to imagine that is coming at some point. We're going to jump to our last preview, which is the Edmonton Oilers in second here versus the Winnipeg Jets. Oilers finished the season with 72, and the best player in the NHL, versus the Winnipeg Jets and last year's Vezina winner. This is an interesting matchup. Prior at some point in the season here, the Winnipeg Jets were actually second in the North and potentially had a chance of overtaking the Leafs, and then went on a 2-8 slide, losing 8 games in 10. And are now kind of coming into the playoffs on a little bit of a limp. They have not matched up well against the Edmonton Oilers, who have had their number all season, specifically McDavid. And it goes into an interesting time when the Oilers power play and PK is once again the best combined in the NHL going into this one. So let's start with this right now. Oilers Jets, who do you got?
Well, let's talk about Oilers' depth, and we're getting depth scoring at the perfect time. James Neal has found his legs. That line is really starting to produce with Ryan McLeod in the middle, with the two veteran wingers on either side, and Chiasson and Neal. I think their top two lines have been really good, and there's been some tinkering with Cahoon going from the second to the first, and Nugent Hopkins popping up and down as well. I think it's worked really well, and our defense has looked the best it's been in, let's say, 12 years. And you got Nurse, who's second in the league in plus minus. You've got Barry, who's a leading scorer and defenseman in the league. And when your third pairing is Caleb Jones and Ethan Bear, who have played together for years as well, I'm quite happy with this lineup going in. And Mike Smith has been an X factor in that, a huge fighter and leader, and just, I think he's been great. So I honestly, this series, I see going 4, maybe 5 games. Hellebuck can steal 1 game, maybe, but I'm going to say Oilers in 4.
My prediction.
Oh God.
Hellebuck.
Oh, get out of here.
Steals 1 game. I don't see the Jets winning this one. They have one of the worst defenses in the entire league.
Yeah.
Their offense is average. Really, they've gotten wins off the back of a great power play and Hellebuck. Again, they're leaning on Hellebuck. Oilers, they're a fantastic offensive team. Their penalty kill is elite, or their special teams is elite. Defensively, I'd say they're below average 5-on-5, but they're nothing compared to Winnipeg and their horrible defense. I don't see Winnipeg having a chance.
All right, all you non-believers out there.
Yeah.
This is a tough series, okay? Because Calgary played Winnipeg last year in the playoffs, so there's still some animosity I have towards the Jets. Paul Maurice calling out Matthew Tkachuk, calling him a dirty player. That's not nice. What did he ever do? And Edmonton is up north and can never cheer for them, no matter who they play. So for me, this is a tough series still. Who am I going to cheer for? Who would I want to win? I'm gonna go, just to change things up, I'm gonna say Winnipeg in 7, and here's my reasoning. We saw last year with Edmonton, a lack of playoff experience really caught up to them against Chicago. Kane and Taves were able to do their thing, and Chicago pulled off a huge upset in a series that they had no chance in on paper, and they really shouldn't have even been in. And then the next round, Chicago they got trounced. And I think Winnipeg has some playoff runs. Scheifele has, Hellebuck. You can't discount that. And I'm going to say Winnipeg in 7. I just want to be contrarian here, but I honestly think that the playoff experience of the Jets, and they're not a bad team. They're just on a slump. Right now, they won 2 out of 10. But you throw that record of the regular season out the window. Right now, their record is 0-0. Just like Edmonton, just like Toronto, just like every other team in the playoffs. So they're 0-0, and they've had some time off to work on some stuff, and hopefully they worked really hard on it. And if they want to borrow any Calgary Flames players to help them, just know, and we'll send them up north so we can get Edmonton out of here. All right. But I'm going to say Jets in 7, but it'll probably be Edmonton in 4.
All right. I'm going to give you this stat, which was shared from a friend of mine, which was that Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler have collectively minus 32.
Yeah.
They have not been great when it comes to that. And McDavid has owned Scheifele this season. He has absolutely dominated. He has scored on Hellebuck in ways that other people haven't. And Hellebuck just looks a little timid out there against him. And I think he is a Vezina goalie. And he was last year's Vezina goalie. He's not this year's Vezina goalie. He's not even in the conversation for this year's Vezina goalie. And I think that you think he's in the conversation.
I don't think he'll be a top 3, but I think he'll.
Well, then he's not in the conversation.
Out of the conversation.
If he gets votes, he's in the conversation. He'll get votes.
But anyone can have a vote.
He had to face more shots and more high danger chances than any goalie in the league.
So, and he unless he gets the votes,
he got them a lot of wins. Winnipeg is a terrible team.
Yes,
We
I
are.
agree. Why are you fighting with me on
But
this?
I will say this. I
Like,
will
what
say
are we
this.
Because their
What are
record
we arguing
doesn't
about?
their record
Because
doesn't
he's the
display a
last-
terrible
Shh,
team, and it's
did I
because of
interrupt you?
Hellebuck.
Did I interrupt you?
Yes, you
No,
did.
Shush. No,
Yes,
shush.
you always
shush,
interrupt me. You're
shush,
doing it right now.
Shush. Shut up.
I'm leaving this podcast. Starting my own.
Thank you.
Bye,
Edit your
boys.
own.
Have
Fine,
fun editing
screw
this by yourself.
But I do think he's not where he was last year. I think it's caught up to him. You can see how tired they are. Like the team just looks sluggish. They can't get things going. They're getting guys back, sure, great, but you're still taking a bit of a loss. And I think last year's loss, despite what Sunjay says, I think last year's loss smarted Edmonton. I think that was a little bit insulting. And you literally seeing guys step their game up. Draisaitl is even actually, if he was going to a full 84 game season, would have more points than last year. Like it's ridiculous. And even though the rest of the team might not be as strong, like Winnipeg's defense is just absolutely atrocious. And I think that is going to be the thing. So I'm going to say Edmonton, and I'm going to say Edmonton in 5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all
I'll
this
agree
talk
this.
about-
Let's not count out Puljujarvi either. Like he has been a beast. He's big and he goes to areas that like he goes right in front of the net.
And Adam already talked about this, but a big difference between this Oilers team and the one that lost to Chicago is Mike Smith. Last year, the Oilers had terrible goaltending. Like they were not great.
Their goaltending wasn't as bad. Like in the playoffs, it was, but the regular season.
In regular
goaltending
season, it
numbers
was
were
nothing to
bad.
write home about. Like it wasn't maybe like among the worst in the league, but it wasn't as good as it is now. Like Mike Smith is probably going to get some votes for Vezina as well this year. Like he's given them fantastic goaltending. And then McDavid and Draisaitl, like you said, have really stepped up their defensive game, right? Like they were minus players last year, even with all those points. And this year they're among the league leaders in plus minus.
I'm worried about Edmonton relying on Mike Smith too much. I mean, look at what their record was with Koskinen to start the year. They were well below 500. Mike Smith comes in. He's been playing lights out. Can he continue this at 38, 39? Like, I don't know. We'll see. I mean,
if he gets hurt, Edmonton will be in trouble.
Yeah, but okay. So if like
That's
if
like
Jack
almost any
if Jack
team.
Campbell's injured,
Well, we have more
Toronto in
options than you guys, but yeah,
trouble? Oh
we'd be
yeah,
in trouble.
big
too.
sip,
No, we have
big sip
Stalock.
Dave,
And Freddie Anderson.
Stalock was good with Minnesota.
but he hasn't played since the bubble last year.
And you know what? He's well rested. That's good.
But then look at Tampa.
Kucherov.
If Tampa loses their goaltender, like who's their backup? Do you feel better with McElhinney back there? Doubt it.
No.
If
Well, I
Oh,
mean,
that's
like,
most teams. That's most
But
teams.
that's what I'm saying. The drop
Yeah.
off from 1 to 2 is always like that. So he can't
Most
like,
teams,
if-
like Vegas, would be fine.
Vegas
There's
is the
a
one.
few teams where they have like salt. Like I think
Like, if
Carolina
Colorado-
would be fine. Carolina would be fine.
If Colorado loses their goaltender, that's not good.
Right? Yeah.
Like they're in trouble,
Yep.
right? Like,
Most
ooh,
teams.
Dubnyk, great.
I will say, like with Hellebuck, everyone's saying like he won the Vezina last year. Last year he got out goaltended by Cam Talbot in the playoffs. It wasn't even close. Like Hellebuck did not look sharp. I remember watching that series and being like, "This is the guy that won the Vezina." Like
But-
he did not look good last year. So that
We're
kind of worries.
we're talking bubble hockey. Guys stopped for how long? Like goaltending it's a crapshoot as it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like it really is. So
Well, Cam Talbot stopped and he came back better than before.
Well, and there
True.
you go. It stopped, and then he came back a different goalie.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
turned back the clock 5 years.
Yeah.
yeah, he's got a career now. He's doing really well in
Yeah,
Minnesota.
hats off to him.
All right. Well, with that, just, I guess, ends this segment of the playoff preview. Like, click, subscribe, share. Feel free to ask questions, comment below. Reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook. Yes, Ryan.
I was going to say, and for all you Edmonton Oilers fans out there who don't know about Adam's Willie Ways in segments, he does a breakdown of each and every Edmonton Oilers game here on our YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out after every playoff game and hear his reaction.
Well,
I
see,
think it's
here's-
pretty entertaining stuff.
Here's the thing. His last one is this next one. He said in Twitter. He said the next one's the last one.
Of the regular season.
Oh, okay. I thought it was weird that you were just stopping. Then I was like,
No, I'll keep going in the playoffs for sure. No,
And
I'm
we're-
amped. I think we'll get better views actually with that.
And when like all the Canadian teams are done, we're just stopping, right? Like, because I'm not going to watch hockey after that. We agree.
So the Stanley Cup
I got
Finals
it.
then? 'Cause the
Yeah,
Canes-
so we're watching the Stanley Cup Finals, and it's all American teams. I'm just gonna be like, sweet. I have other things to do. But yeah, did you watch it? No, I haven't. I have no clue.
No, I didn't watch Vegas versus Boston.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not watching Colorado. Colorado play the Islanders. I'll be like,
It would be kind of cool if it was like two like West teams for a change, right? Like if it was, or like two teams that would never get the chance, like a Toronto Boston, or
could
like
be.
Oh my God, that would be nuts. Toronto, Boston.
$100 straight on Boston right
Yeah.
there.
Honestly, okay.
Easiest money I'll ever make.
Who's everyone's like Stanley Cup favorite right now? Like honestly, mine's Boston.
Like a favorite. I'm gonna jinx it and say the Oilers.
I'm gonna say the Oilers. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Homer. Excuse me.
I'm not going to bet on the Oilers. I think next year is going to be their real big year. So, but the farther they go, the better. I'm going to go with Carolina. I'll take a shot at Carolina. I don't know that I would actually say it. Colorado's got.
I would have said Colorado, but then they won the President's Trophy, so you just
curse.
should not bet for a President's Trophy winner.
Vegas too, man. Vegas could be so good, depending. Except Fleury's going to be the goaltender in playoffs, and well, that's a whole other thing. All right, with that, thank you again for listening. Like, click, subscribe. Feel free to comment, share, reach out. Sanjay always has his DMs open, willing to listen, willing to chat. And
Playing support group here. I got a shoulder to cry on.
That's right. All right, with that, I'm Baron.
I'm Adam.
I'm Ryan.
Je m'appelle Sunjay.
This is Delayed Offside. Thanks for listening.